Ladies and gentlemen, now we continue with a session that touches on some of the most important forces shaping global competitiveness today: digital transformation, innovation-driven growth, and the power of policy to enable future-ready economies. Moderating this panel is Vasko Kronevski, Chair of the Board of Directors of Macedonia 2025 and CEO of Nextsense. Please join me in welcoming our distinguished speakers, His Excellency Stefan Andonovski, Minister of Digital Transformation of Macedonia, and Mr. Matthias Daub, founder of Societec. Welcome.
We had a lovely start today. By my opinion, the most successful summit so far. I love the fully packed hall after the lunch, which is always challenging to be achieved. We have a great session ahead. Policies and innovation for future-ready economy. This is a topic that it's, I would say, at least once per month debated among board members, associates, employees within Macedonia 2025, because we are all driven into achieving this. The Platform for a Prosperous Future, which was many years ago presented as a way forward how to do it, but also last year the new Platform for Accelerated Growth outlined what should be the priorities in the views of Macedonia 2025 to achieve faster economic growth and future-ready economy. In all of those, we identified that digitalization should be at the core. Reason why? There is no efficiency today, there is no transparency, there is no growth, there is no area of life where technology is not in its core. And that's why we said supporting digitalization within Macedonia should be one of our core objectives. I would just mention, would not stay on this topic, but last year we launched an initiative called Go Digital to support the digital transformation of small and medium enterprises. This is an effort financed by Macedonia 2025, but also by our partners, Visa, KIPS, and supporting partners from Swiss Embassy and many others. And thank you to all into supporting initiatives that we run. But today we're going to focus on a different area, how and what we can do and how we can achieve that we really developed a more competitive economy, more transparent and efficient public administration, and to do that, of course, by using technology. We know that technology is a strategic resource today, like it was 100 years ago when we were talking about energy. Energy was the scarce resource everyone wanted to tap into in order to run the industrialization efforts of their country. Today, of course, energy is still in its core and it's very important, but also technology, it's a strategic resource. You cannot advance in any area of life without implementing the newest technology. We know that we have a huge talent pool, technology talent pool in Macedonia, but do we utilize it properly? Do we use it for our advancement, for our economic growth, for our more competitive economy? Or we basically just lend it and outsource it to other economies so the gap can get further away? Those are some provocative topics that I would like to open up in this panel. And to help me with that and to give us the view and the strategic view from the government, we have the distinguished guest, His Excellency Minister Stefan Andonovski. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invite.
And also we have Matthias Daub. He was in his past career senior advisor, global senior advisor for public sector at McKinsey, but currently he has his own company. It was a couple of years ago a startup, now an established company in public digital transformation area. So very deep experience in many countries around the world in the area that we're going to open up and talk today.
Thank you.
So I would start with you, Minister Andonovski. What's your view in this? How we can basically move the needle, as we quite often mention today, and how we can really kick the strategy in the proper direction, that we don't have a parallel digital transformation strategy, but digital transformation, it's in the core of the strategy of the government.
Yeah, and to answer your question, thank you first for the invite and congrats on the fantastic organization once more. It would sound a bit theoretic of my side to say, but we should not digitalize for the sake of digitalization. My view is that we should digitalize because of people, because of progress and because of economic growth of the country, of the society, and of businesses. I see future-ready economies or future-ready countries or governments as governments that don't ask for the documents that you already have given to be given again. They don't ask you to wait in lines for days to get your birth certificate. And then how to get there. Countries with abundant resources or limitless resources would invest in digitalization on a grand scale without caring which area to invest in. They just invest because they have the resources. Unfortunately, we were on the flip side. For 10 years now, we have invested in a portal here, program there, chatbot using quasi-AI that no one uses, in attracting investments that no one knows anymore, platform that no company uses, services that no citizen knows about. We've spent less money and we've spent them sporadically, without a plan. Our approach, we called it Smart Măcă. It means investing smartly. So a future-ready government would be a smart government that invests enough resources, but invests systemically. So you don't invest in parallel interoperability systems. You don't invest in parallel mobile apps that no one should know about. You don't invest in a service in this ministry not connected with a service in another institution. So we have to start with the system, and that's why I think the biggest move, strategic move we made in the decision to form this government was to form the Ministry of Digital Transformation, not to be the sole leader of all digital transformation, but to coordinate the efforts for the money not to be spent twice, because we don't have it. It's usually borrowed money, and second, to have the best results with the money you invest. Insofar, I think we've started well, and we'll discuss more on that. But I think the strategic move to form the ministry and to form a systemic approach in doing this is a good start.
Thank you. Maybe the metering of effectiveness of the investment was part of the strategy, because we recently saw that in a couple of your interviews you were mentioning how much is the cost per service based on the investment and utilization of a specific service. So probably you're going to invest more into that metering and seeing how smart the investments in digitalization were per transaction or by number of citizens using it.
Yeah, maybe I'll mention it now even. The State Audit Office counted that for each digital service offered on the portal uslugi.gov.mk until 2024, each service costed the government 200 euros. The citizen pays only 2 euros out of these 200. With measures of optimization, that be increasing the number of services, but also putting services that people really use on the portal, as well as opening new service centers for people that could not access digital services, and also optimization of the portal itself, we've decreased it for 40%. So the cost per service has decreased by 40%. And you know well that I usually get reports, and I like reports, seeing how many new institutions we have on the National Interoperability Platform, how many new services we've digitalized, how many new institutions offer digital services on the portal, and how many users do we have. But the best KPI I want to get is a sentiment by a citizen who says, this is easier than I expected. You know, I did it faster than I expected. Just last week I got a note that this criminal record certificate that is broadly used in the country, I got it on a Sunday evening, they said. It was signed on a Sunday evening. And they said, wow, this country can deliver. You don't have to wait in lines, pay 500 dinars for a bribery in order to get the certificate right away. You get it for free and you get it online. So that would be the best KPI.
You just touched the topic that I also wanted to open up with Matthias. Why the barriers then? why we have the continuous barriers by the public administration, but it's not only in the public administration, even in digital transformation in large corporations, that why, when we see the benefit of it, what's happening, why we cannot align, why there are those barriers that, maybe for you, Minister, what is the barrier within the government? Why certain areas within the government are not jumping into it? It's a common logic, I would say. Without criticizing, I'm not talking just this government, but any government in the last 20 years was not doing this in most of the areas.
When people say we don't have the money or the budget, I usually compare it with kilometers of highway. For example, 10 kilometers of highway costs approximately as one government data center. So the question of budget is not out there. It's more about question of human capital within institutions to understand in the core what does it mean and to dedicate their time to this process. And the second, of course, is corruption. Because there can be no corruption when almost everything is automatized. You know, when you get your archive number of a case and it's there by the computer, you cannot do a mix-up. You know, you cannot put your documents in front of anyone else's. And we did this with, I always mention it with the Ministry of Interior, with gun licensing. There was a queue and bribes were paid to get a gun license for people that already had it. You have 3 pieces, you want a 4th one, you wait for 2 years, and they don't give it to you because you have not paid the bribe. Now, if you apply, you're number 1 in the system, and there can be no other number before you. So you're the first in the row. And until your case is solved, no other cases can be solved. So I think there is a question of human capital, of understanding how strategically important digitalization of processes within institutions is. And the second aspect is still this emotion of corruption that is still persistent among the society in general, not among public institutions.
Thank you. Matthias, I'm sure that you can give us your perspective into this because you were engaged in your work previously in McKinsey, but also with society, your current company, into directly consulting, but also engaging in transformation of the public services. How do you see, first of all, what's the reason behind the barrier? Why there is a resistance into jumping into any reform using technology? And probably this is due to our nature that we want the status quo, but I think it's more than that. Mm-hmm. And what methods you found and what do you consult and how do you approach your clients to help them overcome this?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's my first time in Skopje and I'm very impressed and glad to be here. And I think indeed there's lots to be learned from what the world is doing. If I may be so frank, when I talk to other government leaders, North Macedonia is not a benchmark that they are looking up to. So the question is, how could you get there and what would be the role that you will want to play? And governments are different by geography, by their constitution and by many aspects. But if I cut across, and I've been working a lot in Germany, where I'm from, in the German-speaking region, in the EU, but also in the US and Australia, Singapore, I think there is, it starts with an ambition, and I think we heard that from the ambassador before. So there has to be an ambition, a positive ambition for the country. And this is not around digitization. So I work in technology, Vasko, you work in technology, but it is not about the technology. And I think many programs fail because there is a technology program at the core. And technology is not the problem. Technology is there, technology can be solved. Of course, technology needs management and needs resources, but technology does not make the difference between countries who do it well and who do it poorly. The other thing is that, and I might dare to contradict you, Stefan, that budget is often a problem. I'm from Germany, and Germany has thrown a lot of money at this problem and still hasn't cracked it. And I've seen other countries, I've seen Estonia with much more limited budget, and you can talk about, yes, they had a clean slate to start with and so on. There are many excuses why it worked well in Estonia and doesn't work in other countries. But the budget has been what Germany breezes away in a month into government digitization, and Germany is not yet world class. So, and then as you say, budget can be made available, right? So but I've seen many countries who are very resource rich and haven't made it, and many countries who are resource poor and have made it. So budget can't be the big differentiator. I think then there's an over-focus on strategy, and that's as a former strategy consultant, right? So strategies are relatively cheap in this field. I mean, it's about user access to services, it's about back-end optimization, and they are not too dissimilar across countries. But a disciplined execution, I think that is the element that makes it very different. And I think here's also where governments differ. And then something which I think governments can make a big difference is how much user centricity you actually create or not. I worked with the German government on enabling a better service provision in the field of housing benefits. So this is for people who struggle to pay their apartment and they can get a government subsidy. It was a very wasteful and inefficient paper-based process, 20-page forms to be filled out. And it actually was so long, it took so long that people who were eligible did not get the benefit, because the government was so slow to respond. And what then happened was that those people were driven into losing their homes because they couldn't continue to pay the rent. And then the government and society has a much bigger problem. So when we started to change this and put it on a digital platform, we said we will not start unless we bring the people who work on the forms together with the applicants. And that was the moment when it all came together, because then the people met on a personal level. And as you said, it was the focus on the people. Then people started to realize, oh, if I don't do my work properly, then my fellow patriot will end up on the street. So this is not about digitization. This is about taking care of our society as a whole and making sure that we provide decency of living, and not only to citizens, but also to governments who want to invest here. I've started 3 companies over the last couple of years. The first one in Germany, it took me 4 months until I got everything done. The last one in the Republic of Moldova, and it took me about a day. So talk about differences in government's performance. And it doesn't look very good for my own home country.
Thank you. This is a really fresh perspective. But basically, if I can wrap up from your discussion, both of you, I would say that we definitely need to act fast. Transform the way we plan and implement into more agile way. So the long-term planning of projects and multi-year projects, it's a past. So yeah, we need a strategy, but basically we need to act today. And then even if we are mistaken, we can adopt and then shift and be sensible to the public, to the citizens and businesses in what they need. Because yes, as the minister said, budget can be found, but need to be spent smartly, as you said. Because if you spend it wrongly, then not enough budget for sure to achieve the goals. What we see also is that most of the public sector, as we see, especially in Macedonia, but I would say that's kind of a regional and even international thing, it's lacking deep knowledge in technology, because most of the talent went out. Most of the talent that was working for the public sector left public sector because there were greater opportunities outside of the public sector. So how do we address this? How do we address keeping the talent working with the government? Because without the technology, without the talent, we cannot transform the work of the government. So what's your experience, Matthias, in this?
Yeah, it's a hard problem, and it's also something that I experienced very personally. I basically took away a very bright Romanian girl who now lives with me in Germany, so I contributed to the brain drain. But on a serious note, I think we can't really kind of change it on a holistic basis, right? On the one hand side, we want freedom of labor, and we want this exchange and move, and we want people to be educated globally, so it will happen naturally. But of course, it's scary to see when villages dry out because there is no more use there, and I've seen this in several places. What I've seen governments do is, and those are very different governments, but for example, the government of Singapore, and I don't mean to compare this, but I think the policy is worth thinking through. They have an open door policy. So there is the opportunity to join government for a while and then move back into your previous private sector job. Right? And there are some kind of guardrails around that, but that doesn't mean that people have to give up their private sector career, but that they can serve, and not only for 6 weeks, but rather for a more extended period, making sure that they bring in their knowledge. And many people want to serve their country. I mean, Macedonia 2025 wouldn't be there if people don't want to serve their country, and especially with those who come back from abroad. So I think, but you have to give them a platform, and you have to give them a way to come in. I think the other thing that is happening is that often, of course, governments spend a lot of money, and some governments have found very smart ways of encouraging startups and encouraging technology to be used internally. Think about Israel and their famous cybersecurity firms that basically stem from the military. What are ways where you can give startups a future? Basically, not only by nice talk, but actually by real dinars, by real euros, to make sure that they can stay and can grow where you are.
Thank you.
And I think there's other pieces around that, and I think kind of bringing people back home is something that I've seen some countries do successfully. And it doesn't have to be tens of thousands, right? So if you have a few people, a nucleus of people who come back home with their experience, potentially also with some financial resources, they can really make a difference. And then the good thing about being a small country, you're not far away neither from your neighbors nor from the rest of Europe. So there might be people who have settled, I don't know, in my case, Berlin, but they could still do a meaningful contribution here. They could own and run a business here. What hinders them from being here? So I think it's not about either or, but it could also be a combination of having something somewhere in Europe and in Macedonia.
Thank you, Matthias. Minister, we would like to hear your perspective into this. What do you think that the government within the strategy can do to overcome this gap, this lack of technology-enabled resources within the government? We know that it's hard to keep them. It's hard to attract them to work in the government because there are more appealing jobs in the private sector, especially abroad. So how do we tap into the talent to utilize it for our strategic goals instead of lending them working for other governments and other
I think first we should be realistic that most probably people that will be employed these couple of years in the government working in the ICT sector most probably will leave the government sector in 4 to 8 years. Even if you increase the salaries twice, probably the private sector will increase them 3 times until 2028 or 2030. So I think the approach should be in a two-way street, but also cooperating one with the other. The first one is, and I've done it in my ministry, and we're starting the process just now, this month, is employing people, but employing them in 4 different models. So full-time employment for the people that want to be employed and stay, part-time employment for people that would like to move, maybe check it out, maybe come back to the private sector or see what the future holds. Then agreements made on a project basis. We want to work on this project, we need more people right now, and then we don't need them, and they don't need us because they learned and they can work in the private sector, and volunteers. And people coming from universities, it was mentioned in the previous panel, increase the number of people that come to work during the summer, during their studies, etc. So this is the first part, but it has to be combined with working on their digital skills. working on their skills to work in the public administration in general. That's why we applied for an IPA project for 150 digital champions that will be built throughout the public administration the next 2 years. We will oblige these people because they will pass through a very significant systemic education to stay for twice the time in the public administration. And also we have our own digital services trainings and academia that will be provided for our own employees. Both this group and the previous one will have to stay for a while in the public administration. So this is the first aspect. The second aspect is building partnerships with the private sector. Apart from maybe parts of cybersecurity that I personally believe should stay within the public administration domain, most of the services that are offered by the government and projects and processes built by the government can be done through a partnership with the private sector. We have a very strong, very active, very dynamic private sector in the country, both startups and very predominant companies. Unfortunately, until now, it was taught as a tender procedure. You do a contract, the contract ends, and that's it. We're building now a more collaborative atmosphere. We want to build long-term partnerships. So we'll work with codes that are owned by the government, but collaboratively worked on, upgraded by the private sector as well. And I think knowing each other, because it's such a small country, we can build this ecosystem if it's done like this in a strategic, open manner, and not in a manner of, we have a contract for 3 months, it ends, and that's it with the project. Because we've seen that if we don't build these products for a longer period of time, if we don't develop them for a longer period of time, they're practically not working. When it was done on a short-term basis, it was not successful.
Thank you. This sounds inspiring. Yeah, because it seems like a good idea and good approach how to engage the talents to work and support the development of the government, because that's much needed, because the technology sector needs counterparts within the public sector in order to drive the projects, in order to develop the ideas, even to move the projects ahead. There needs to be some kind of a counterpart within the public sector. Lacking of this probably would lead to 100% outsourcing. So either it's this approach or the other approach would be give away everything that is technology related to the outsourced services, basically, which would be hard to achieve because of the privacy, security, many issues that will arise out of that. Please.
Also, I feel that the private sector needs to open up to people's needs as well. I believe I'm coming from the private sector before this job, but it's okay to be profit-oriented, but you have to think what people want when you work with the public sector. A platform for services should be a platform for services for citizens and companies, not services for the IT engineers that did the platform, Open up.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Enough critiques for the government.
Yeah. No, every reform needs, I would say, 360 view. Everywhere needs to be a change. It's not a critic to the government or to the private sector or to the education. Basically, every stakeholder needs to take its part in the transformation and the reform. Let's talk about a little bit about innovation and how policy can drive innovation in a way. I always tend to see that governments are reluctant to start a reform or a policy change because status quo is the desired current state. If we don't change it, we are accommodated to this, we feel good, we feel confident, and we don't change it. But postponing the change, which is inevitable, sometimes due to global agreements, because let's take, there is a global agreement to counter terrorism. So these efforts basically are translated into regulations, those regulations into standards, and at the end we need to implement it. But pushing this away at a later stage basically will leave other countries to leapfrog ahead of us and become more efficient, more competitive by innovative ideas. So we lose the time where we can be the winners that reap the results faster. But on the other way, we also jeopardize the local technology sector, because not giving them the opportunity to be the front runners in innovation by creating technology to address some new global challenge, some new transformation, some new demand that's coming up for the country. By pushing it later, basically, we become technology importers instead of technology exporters. And to satisfy the growing demand for technology import, we outsource our people to support their services to sell more technology to our country. So how we can transform the mindset that we should be grabbing the transformational challenges instead of postponing them. And maybe some examples, Matthias, and both you, Minister, if you can give us some examples of good examples in the global economy in different countries, how they grasp this opportunity, first of all, to develop the country to be more competitive, but on the other side, help the technology sector become export-oriented instead of import-oriented.
Sure. Oh.
Yeah.
I'll try to give a more interesting practical example first, and then a theoretical, boring legal example. Actually, it comes from this event last year, and that's a funny story. On the sidelines of this event last year, I met with the former Minister of Digitalization of Slovenia, and I wasn't appointed at the time, and we came to a dilemma. If Macedonians use so much smartphones, why haven't we brought the government to their smartphone? They have everything in their smartphone, they don't have the government in it. And that's how we developed the idea of utilizing what Ukraine has done, what Poland has done, what Slovenia is doing, into having the first Macedonian government super app. And we started working right away. So I had a meeting a week after in Zurich, and we started working first with the Ukrainian Ministry of Digital Transformation, then with the Polish, with the Europeans, on building what I think will be the flagship application of this ministry, and that's our own government super app. And we'll have it this year. I hope by the end of 2025, it will be a prototype, it will be a testing app, and we will have the electronic version of the ID cards and the driving licenses, so you don't bring your wallet with you, you have it in your phone, but also add the key services that you need. So add the most important services that everybody needs in the country, be them 1 or 2, 3, and then connect it with the National Portal for Services and have all of them at the portal as well. But the important notion at the time was, how can we talk about international change and bring it right away here? Because I was believing then, I believe it now, then we can do big jumps in the area of digital transformation. In the area of building railways, as the Prime Minister mentioned, you have to go mile by mile, kilometer by kilometer. Here we can make huge changes because we've done them in the past. 15 years ago, we were the first ones digitalizing the cadastre, first one digitalizing the e-government, having the health fund and Moj Termin 2007, 2008. So we have these examples enshrined in our DNA. Now we can do it practically in real life. We got the project, we got it from Digital Europe. We'll start implementation this June, because my ambition is to simplify things, to make them usable for citizens. What is the most used format nowadays is the smartphone. Rarely who has a laptop at home if you don't work in sector that needs it, but everybody of us has some kind of smartphone in their hands, and also everybody of us is digitally literate enough to use their smartphones for a very long time, because internet penetration and smartphone penetration are huge in this country. So this is something I'm very much energetic, enthusiastic about, and I think we will succeed because we have the ambition and the willingness and the knowledge how to do it. We have the local support from local companies to help us in this process, and it will be successful. On the more boring side, we changed a very simple article in the law on electronic documents, that everything you get from the portal, and it is an electronic document, you can print it out and use it as a normal, regular stamped document that was used in the past. And you probably, internationals in the room, will say, aha, good job, you did nothing. But what the situation we faced was when we came into government is that when someone gets an electronic service, electronic document, they pay twice. They got it electronically, they go to the bank, to the notary, to the lawyer, and the lawyer says, doesn't work. You should go back, take a paper copy, get it back, and you give it to me regularly. So I was saying we should cancel this ministry, forget about digitalization if we don't change this, if you cannot print out an electronic document. So January the 1st, 2025, we have printed electronic documents are valid, and people start using them. We had some minor issues in the beginning, but now courts accept them. notaries accept them, banks gladly accept them, and the whole flow is faster. That's why we have increase in the usage of the portals by 200% in terms of services issued per month. That's why we increase the number of people that are using the portal. The interoperability platform is 20% higher transaction rate than it was before. So people will understand and accept what you do. You just need to, provide them the resource. Just 2 more sentences on the laws. We are now passing the cybersecurity law for the first time in the country. It will be a law for the future. It will not regulate something that was done 15 years ago. It will put our action plan and a map, what should private and public institutions do in the course of 3, 4, 5 years in order to be fully digitally secure. And we're not saying that the inspectorate that we're building in the ministry will go to large corporations and find them because they have not built their cyber infrastructure, but we will tell them how the process can be done. And plus, we will motivate private sector to work with our public institutions and private companies to get to the line. We also have 3 other laws that I will not bother you with, but those will be the laws for the future, not the laws that will bring boring bureaucratic hurdles to public sector or to private sector or to public institutions.
I'll come back with some questions that will be challenging, I hope. But I'll move now to Matthias.
Yeah, maybe.
Matthias, by your view, what would be the good examples where innovation was driven by policy and reform that kickstarted some new innovation thinking, product development, technology development that basically served the purpose at that point, but also became economic growth potential for a country?
Yeah. I think there's a number of factors that foster innovation. And actually, some of them are, the little I know about North Macedonia, are applied to here. I think on the one hand side, there has to be a need, right? So there has to be a problem, and people need to gather around it. And I understand that you're forming here this alliance which has the ambition to change the country. And it goes step by step. It doesn't happen all at once. But I think changing it step by step is something that is important. There is a saying that a big walnut tree is nothing but a small walnut that has not given up. So basically, it doesn't happen overnight. It happens by sticking to it. I think then innovation typically happens at the edges of a system. There's research around that it kind of doesn't happen in the core. And like if we talk about this, the most innovative solutions are unlikely to come from Brussels. They're much more likely to come from Skopje. So that should be an encouragement to all of us here. I think then you need to trust between people who want to drive this forward, and I hope that this event builds that trust among you, right? There need to be people who need to come together and say, we want to make this a priority and want to drive it forward. And I think get away with the belief that it is technology where you need to innovate. The technology is often available, it can be created. Technology has advanced so much. When we do work with our clients, then of course, yes, we have a technology backlog of things that need to change. But more important is a legal backlog. There's things that need to be changed in the law. And I love the example that you just gave about the possibility to basically show the printout from the electronic version. So those are the type of things that really foster innovation. And I think then there is an element.
Also by itself, it's kind of innovation in the public service. So
yeah. And then don't give it time.
The idea is innovation, and then implementing it.
Make it fast. Make it 3 months, not 3 years. And one very concrete example: the government of Austria had long been investing into government digitization, and there was never really a breakthrough until they enforced a law that gave ordinary citizens the right to sue the government if they didn't have the chance to apply for a service online. That drove massive speed. And so sometimes the governments really have a big advantage because no private sector company could do that. So you can basically aim for 100% penetration.
That's a good idea to push the innovation, because my next topic would be exactly around innovation, but not in the technology sector, but innovation in public policies. how we kickstart innovation in public policy. I will give you a very small example. Macedonia is just now launching an e-invoice project. This has been there for 15 years, maybe more, by standards regulated. So implementing it now, we already decided that we're either going to copycat or import or follow. To innovate, it's too late. This is already mature as a concept, as an idea, with all its flaws and advantages. The big question here is why we were waiting for 15 years to make sure that we collect taxes, we monitor fraud. I'm not talking technology, I'm talking efficiency within the government financial system. Ensure that the budget collections are 100%, detect fraud immediately. Why we were waiting for 15 years instead of doing it first? And the question to both of you that I would like to see how we can foster that part of innovation within public services that will be partly government-driven, also industry-driven, and how we open up that dialogue so we identify the problem before anyone else got a solution for it. Because this will drive us leapfrogging fast. This will bring growth of 5%, 6%, 7%. By following everyone, when this is becoming already a standard, we're going to probably not leapfrog. We're going to be always lagging behind, and they will reap up the first benefits.
A regular answer that we get from a politician is, let's draft a national strategy. And then a European answer to this would be, let's draft a law. So on AI, for example, because it was part of the talk that we had heard before, it was, the proposition is draft a national strategy and draft a AI law. And me thinking is we have zero implementation of AI in public service, in public administration in general, almost close to zero. And then if I use 2 years in order to draft a law, first a strategy, then a law, then we'll lose all this time while countries from around the region will implement new models of generative AI that are 100% used in the public domain, and they will, be front runners. My approach is a bit different, and I liked what it was said before. We will not draft an AI strategy for the next 1 year. We'll draft an AI action plan and a framework within public administration in the next 4 months. And then we will give concrete work and tasks to other institutions to implement AI models in their own work, and also test it through our universities and our private companies in a secure cloud infrastructure where every institution can test their work through AI and efforts, efficiency given, and what laws should be changed in order to implement it in practice. So we first start and work on it, and then we regulate it if we see and when we see where the problems could emerge. I think this is the right way in this direction, because we could have drafted a cybersecurity law that was on the level that we are right now. It would be the NIS directive, probably. 2014, now it's 2025, 11 years old. We would be on par if we drafted that as a law. I put the NIS 2 directive, which is 2024, because I'm 100% aware that no institution right now is ready for it, and probably no private company is ready for it. But this is how we propose something, we regulate something, and we give a vacatio legis of a year, 2 years, 3 years, in which you have the time to accommodate, to innovate, and to implement it in practice. So I think this approach should be on our side, and also map out where the problem lies. Because the problems here with corruption, with inefficiencies, with transparency are different than in other countries. And that's why talking to the private sector and to citizens is for me very important. We introduced a feedback form on the uslugi.gov.mk portal, but we also talked. Actually, we organized a joint event with Macedonia Advice Pet in the government, in which we talked to the chambers of commerce. We're talking to schools, we're talking to universities in order to understand where the problem lies. A very specific example. We have digitalized 310 services online. Out of them, about 200 are for companies. About 90% of them are never used. no company has ever applied for a license through the portal, which means that we have digitalized something that no one uses. Instead of that, now we're trying to look which are the most important services companies want digitalized. And we go through forums, we go to surveys, through talking with companies, but also through promotion, through saying, guys, this is what is being digitalized. For example, Regulatory Committee of Energy has digitalized almost every service they use on the national portal. The health fund, the pensions fund, they are out there, and we will go through a campaign to showcase it, but also talk to businesses and also see what really is important to be digitalized.
Thank you. Matthias?
Yeah, 3 things. I think you should fire your pilots, you should team up, and you should spend more. And what I mean by that is stop kind of wasting away public money on pilots. I remember one quote from a client who said, I have more pilots than Lufthansa, but none of them works. So none of them make it to the end, right? So the plane doesn't start. So focus. Make sure that there's a few areas that can really go through. And then the second thing is team up. So it's not about making these services, bring them into the portal, as you said, but make sure that they really create value. And I'm preaching this to governments. When you have, the most important thing is that you measure how much they are being used and how happy the users are. You can also measure other things, such as how much efficiency they drive and so on, but that's for the more advanced. But these 2 simple things, make sure that this is actually embedded. And then the third one is talk about it and explain it. So the German government launched an ID that back then, and it still is technologically very advanced. So it's very highly secure. You can basically identify online. And it has been around for 15 years. And it's a sad example of very sophisticated technology that millions were spent on. But the marketing budget had been very, very small. So nobody is using it. Actually, when you go and get a new ID, then the agent in the office will tell you, don't activate the EID function. I don't know how it works. Or it might not be secure. It's stupid. It's one of the best systems worldwide, but it's not being used. And it basically, as you said, it could have been a real export case for Germany, but it has been wasted. So because people did not understand it, there was no marketing around that. Millions were spent on the technology, but I don't know the exact number, but 50,000 on marketing. So people just don't get it, why it's good to have it.
Last question. How we can build a partnership between the government and the private sector to create technology-driven technology exports out of the country? Not services, but I would say technology and product exports based on innovation. You mentioned the example from Ukraine, where the DIA government mobile app was developed, but now Ukraine, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Digital Transformation are attacking the whole world on conferences and trying to link their technology sector into bridging their knowledge to other markets. We know the example of Estonia. So Estonia, economic diplomacy probably in IT is the most developed across the world. There is no country that we have been that there is no economic operator that promote IT industry before any other reach there. So how do we build this partnership? How we find our niche? How we transform the sector from services to technology exports, and how this can be achieved?
I mean, for a very long time, we were focusing, and rightly so, on decreasing unemployment because the unemployment rate was huge. And I think the governments in the past were indiscriminate of who comes to invest in the country as long as they employ enough people. And that's how we got IT companies in the country that employ hundreds of people, IT engineers, software testers, etc., but export services, export their work hours. Now we have to focus on the products. And I think developing innovative products in a partnership between the government and private sector can boost this process. If it's invested in products, then are exported, because they are the added value to the economy. And then we can do a roadshow outside, internationally, selling what is the Macedonian DIA app, selling what is the next Macedonia best product in uncovering corruption, seeing what is our niche in terms of products. That's why maybe some of the companies will get angry with me when I speak that as a government, we have to focus on the ICT sector that produces added value, which means produces products, and can export them and is competitive enough to export them abroad. And this is doable because great ideas come from the young minds of this country that have passed through our great state and private universities that are teaching ICT. And I think these guys are the future if we develop them in the right direction. How? Through projects that come from the government as well. Because unfortunately, still in this country, the government is the biggest employer so far. It will, for a while, will be the biggest investor in these products because we need huge digitalization in the public domain. But then also say to the private sector, I'll end with this, I think the digital innovation hubs, the one that you are doing, the one that it's done in the engineering faculty, are the way to go, which build consortia of private sector, chambers of commerce, and the public into solving problems. Solving problems of the public domain will mean corruption, transparency, efficiency. In the private sector will probably mean value creation, lower costs on employment, better processes, automation of processes, but that could be only done, I think, through this kind of consortia. That's why we supported the EDIH, the European Digital Innovation Hub. We will support the ones that come this year as well, because I think that kind of consortia can create value added that then we can export to internationally.
Matthias, very briefly, we are over time, but I'll take one more minute, very briefly from you and a couple of fire-up questions from the audience.
Sure. Yeah, I would say make it easy for startups to serve you as a government. Many countries create enormous hurdles, and then startups turn away to other places. And it looks like you're doing a lot of that. I think then find your niche, right? So I don't think that you can serve everybody on everything, but what is specific for here? What do you want to be known for? Where can you actually contribute? And then create that community of people who can support and help each other and get going. I wish the country a lot of success and good luck.
Thank you, Matthias. I will just read a couple of questions and comments that are coming from the audience. So Switzerland is using open source in the public sector to boost transparency, security, and reduce costs. Could this be a digital strategy? I think this was already discussed and mentioned as part of the strategy. I am impressed by the minister's knowledge, but curious what the government timelines for deliverables. When we are next year, what will be online? That's a very quick question here. Anything that we can commit on?
2025, 100 new services online, including the most used services from the public and the private sector. And I think we will have, by 2026, e-baby. So every newborn will be automatically digitally registered in the National Registry. We'll give the birth certificate to the mothers while they're still in hospital.
I think this question... The next one, I think it was kind of already answered, but still, how does the ministry compare to Dodge? Are there opportunities for ambitious IT students to help? I think this was kind of
there is a lot of
addressed in this way. Do you plan to introduce policy to support local IT solutions and products in order to grow regularly, regionally and globally instead of supporting outsourcing IT companies? In another way, again, answered. And then why not privatize like Georgia?
What not?
Why do not we privatize like Georgia?
You see,
public services.
Two questions, two different extremes. One, why don't we privatize everything? The other one, do we make it public?
Yeah, of course.
I think the answer lies in between, in partnerships. I don't believe in
Thank you.
one or the other.
Sorry to take out 1 minute more, but thank you. My guests were